What's up, guys, and welcome to a kinda sorta Halloween-themed Q&A. I chose some spooky questions this time around.
Yeah, and I've got the best Star Wars Halloween shirt of all time.
That's not spooky at all.
But it's the best.
It's not spooky. My shirt's spooky. I got a zombie MC Chris on me. And I wanted to give him a shout out because last week we actually went to his concert and he gave us a shout out, which I was not expecting and he certainly didn't have to do. So I wanted to repay the favor. If you've never listened to his song Fets Vet, go listen to it because he raps about nerdy things like Star Wars and he's awesome.
Yeah, and he's writing new Star Wars songs.
Yeah.
All right, let's get spooky. Troy Williams asks if we'll ever see a horror Star Wars movie or TV show.
I don't think we're going to see a horror movie, just a straight Star Wars horror movie. I think that for the most part, they're going to stick to what all the Star Wars movies have felt like. I mean, they dip into other genres, like Rogue One was more of a war story, and Solo was more of a Western, but for the most part, it still feels like Star Wars, so I don't think it's going to be a straight-up horror movie. There will be a Star Wars movie with some horror elements, but TV show feels a little more likely where an episode might be dedicated to horror.
Right, yeah.
Like, we got a few Clone Wars episodes that had things like zombies in them, so I think that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, and like the moments in movies can be scary, like the end of Rogue One was pretty suspenseful. I mean, we all were really into it, but you know, the point of that scene is to be like, Darth Vader is pretty scary.
Yeah, he's terrifying. And like all those rebel soldiers, it's just pure terror on their face. So yeah, I think moments here and there, but I'd be surprised if we ever got a straight up horror movie.
Ada Can Aiden wants to know which canon story is the scariest.
I always want to say Death Troopers, but it's not canon anymore. It's a Legends book. So I'm going to go with The Screaming Citadel. I didn't necessarily find it to be all that scary, but it's the only canon story I can think of that was written to be a gothic horror. I mean, you can see influences from Bram Stoker's Dracula and all kinds of things, and it had some scary, intense moments, but it also was very campy, so I don't know, there's a balance between spooks and jokes, I guess. Not really jokes, it's just I didn't find it to be all that terrifying, but at least it was written to be.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking of the episode, I think it's called Massacre, of Clone Wars with the zombie witches on Dathomir. And
that's a good one.
I like that episode a lot.
And I did mention the Brain Invaders episode of Clone Wars. That makes sense too. I mean, anything with zombies in it, I guess, gets to go up on the scary Star Wars stories list.
There's also a couple of kind of spooky stories that are more aimed towards the younger audience, like Vader's Castle is a comic series out now that has kind of like spooky elements to it. And then this is a book, I'm not sure what the age group is, but
it's very young.
It's Are You Scared, Darth Vader?
He fears nothing.
yeah, he says, I fear nothing. But I read through this book, and as an adult, there are some
There are like some existential scary questions in it that I was surprised by. I don't think a kid would find them scary, but as an adult, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is like how sad Darth Vader is.
Yeah. And the Tales of Vader's Castle is also a younger targeted story, but they've been fun. I wouldn't call them all that scary or anything, but for being released all October, it's been a fun time.
Yeah.
I'm going to cover them in the canon update next week.
Eric Wall asks what the most terrifying planet in Star Wars is.
You already brought it up, but for me, I think it's probably Dathomir. Because, I mean, it's covered in witches and zombies and, like, Mother Talzin's apparitions, and it's a scary place. It's also covered in, like, even the plant life's scary. It's like these thorny vines, and Darth Maul lives there, and I wouldn't want to go there, but I do hope we get to see it again on the big screen now that Maul's been reintroduced in Solo.
Yeah. I guess I would say Mustafar, because it's a planet made out of lava, and Darth Vader lives there in his spooky castle, and we just recently found out a bunch of information about the planet itself and how it used to be and what happened to it. This is all from the Darth Vader comics if you haven't read them.
Yeah, a lot of people died there before it was an apocalyptic lava-covered hellscape.
Yeah, there's lava fleas there.
And yeah, those things are scary in the VR mission.
If you've played the Secrets of Empire VR game experience thing, you'll know that the lava fleas are scary.
They're scary.
All right, now that we've been sufficiently spooked, I think we can get back to some normal Star Wars questions.
Thank goodness.
Daryl Cooper wants to know why we think the sequel trilogy should have been more thoroughly planned when the original trilogy was largely made up along the way.
Yeah, that's something I have definitely said before, and I still agree with. I do obviously think that making up a story as you go can work, because it did work for the original trilogy. I just think that filmmaking has changed since the late 70s and early 80s, and I think especially the MCU has changed the game and changed what audiences expect. When you have a film franchise now, people expect it to be planned and they expect it to build, and Star Wars is just kind of going in a different direction. And they're saying, okay, you're J.J. Abrams, you write and direct this. Rian Johnson, you write and direct this. And originally it was Colin Trevorrow, another writer and director, was going to finish it off, and now it's J.J. Abrams. And it's okay to have different directors, but I wish Lawrence Kasdan had written all three, or at least outlined them in advance or something like that.
Yeah, there definitely should have been some kind of outline for them to stick to, I think, because we've gone so long without seeing or hearing from these characters that we all know and love, and the sequel trilogy is all new. Like you said, with Marvel movies, they kind of have a storyline already to go alongside with, whereas Star Wars has been going on for a really long time, and all this stuff is brand new, and they've got to wrap up the Skywalker story, and, you know, all that stuff's really sensitive. So I think kind of making it up along the way is definitely a big risk.
I guess the way it feels is that Disney spent $4 billion and then immediately was like, okay, how do we make this back as fast as possible? Episode 7, get the whole cast back in it, and we'll blow it out of the water. And they did, but I kind of feel like maybe they should have slowed it down a little bit and said, we're going to plan out this major trilogy. And maybe in the meantime, they do Solo and they do Rogue One, and they let that hype build a little more. And as long as they communicate, we're going back to the Skywalkers, it's coming, just like bear with us while we figure this out. I kind of feel like that would have been the better approach, but we could walk out of episode 9 and everything might tie together perfectly, and we'll be like, oh, I don't know what we were worried about. Or we could see it and walk out and be like, oh, I still wish that they had planned this out beforehand. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see till next year.
Rachel Mueller asks which Star Wars short stories are our favorites because they often get overlooked when compared to other Star Wars content. I agree with that, and I would have to say Kindred Spirits, which is a short story about Asajj Ventress and her time after the Clone Wars, but before the book Dark Disciple, so it's just kind of about her life as a mercenary, bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's written by Christy Golden,
yes,
who is one of my favorite Star Wars authors. I'm going to go with The Perfect Weapon by Delilah Dawson, and that's also kind of a personal choice because we made a video on that when it came out, and it was one of our first big hits. I think it's still one of our most viewed videos. And even beyond that personal reason, I feel like of all the short stories, that's the one that added to the universe the most. I felt like when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this just answered a pretty big question in my opinion, or at least it hinted towards it. Yeah. Not confirmed, but I still think that that's at least what it was hinting at. And it was exciting. And none of the other short stories have really grabbed me that way.
We'll put a link in the description to that video. If you haven't seen it, it's good stuff.
That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where we left you a written response. And actually, as of yesterday, we have completely revamped our Patreon and how it works. We've added more tiers and more rewards. And with that already comes some new stuff for you to check out. We have started doing weekly audio commentaries for the television series. We're starting with the Clone Wars because overwhelmingly that's what people wanted. And plus it's on Netflix. It's just easier to access.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Clone Wars in so long.
It's been a while since we've watched through it.
It feels like watching it for the first time for me.
Yeah, so we're doing these audio commentaries, and one of our goals that's coming up is to unlock a Clone Wars rewatch. Chronological, we're going to do that here on the YouTube channel while we wait for season 7. We've also got stuff out right now, like a big behind the scenes video from this entire past month that just shows you what we do on this channel. And
yeah, it's kind of like a vlog style video, but it's going to be for basically the entire month. And we're just shooting a couple of little videos every day or every other day, just what we're getting up to.
Yeah, whether it's making videos or rushing to read through a book to do videos on that, or studying for the Schmodown that we'll be competing in soon. That's the kind of stuff that you can see there. And there are a ton of other rewards and stuff. I did a video about it yesterday. I'll link to that in the description as well if you're interested. But and one of the big ones is having your name in the credits of every single video, which you'll get to see at the end of this video. So if any of that interests you, go check out our revamped Patreon and consider signing up, please.
Yeah. On to YouTube questions. Red7 standing by asks if Dryden Voss could have been a Mandalorian who joined Maul at the end of Clone Wars, explaining his position in Crimson Dawn and his red armor.
I won't write that idea off completely, but it's not really what I think right now. I think that he just has the red armor because he's a collector.
Yeah.
That's all I think.
Yeah, and like his position in Crimson Dawn is just that he's a scary dude. He's got a scary face, scary eyeballs. He's got stabby blades.
Keeping it all Halloween themed.
Yeah.
Maybe Maul felt some sort of kinship with him because they both have scary markings on their face.
Could be.
But yeah, I don't necessarily think he's a Mandalorian because even though in Legends that was like a cultural thing, now in the canon it looks like it's more of a like bloodline thing, and I don't see him being part of that. But I don't know. I don't want to say just no, there's no way, because I think there is a way.
Yeah.
But
I think he was just a collector, and the armor looks pretty old.
Yeah, I mean, the Solo guide even says it's ancient armor, so...
Nico Janatunen wants to know if we could ever see a book or comic series about Momin.
I think that's possible. I mean, Charles Soule is about to wrap up the Darth Vader comic with issue 25, and he says he's not done in Star Wars, and he created Momin, like, way back in the Lando comic, so I think there's potential there, but...
You want to explain who Momin is?
Yeah, he's this, like, ancient Sith Lord from the Darth Vader comics right now, who is actually kind of introduced in the Lando comics, and he's got this helmet that can possess people and corrupt people, and now we're starting to learn more about him, so potentially, sure. I guess it depends on how ready they are to explore Old Republic stuff, because I've said before, I think they're probably going to focus on the Old Republic in movies first and define it there. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they are starting to show us some of that stuff, I think, is hopefully a sign that they're getting ready to do that. So if they have it defined the way they want it in their heads, then yeah, I think they can give creators the go-ahead to tell Old Republic stories.
Yeah. I think maybe if they ever did a Plagueis book, which I'm still hoping that they do, he could pop up in there, but I don't think he would get a dedicated book or series.
I think, yeah, maybe Plagueis could talk about him, but the helmet itself has been hidden away in the Jedi archives for a while, and then Palpatine even said that the ancient Sith tried to bury his story, but he still knew about it, so he must have maybe heard it from Plagueis? I don't know.
The True Republic of Gaming asks if we still hold out hope for the Chiss to appear in Episode 9.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I feel like we just said something like this. I don't think they're going to come in and save the day or anything. Like, I don't think Finn's going to point up to the sky like Pippin in Lord of the Rings and be like, the Chiss are coming.
The Eagles are coming.
Yeah. I think instead we could just see a blue-skinned humanoid as part of the Resistance or something like that. I feel like it'd be more of a background inclusion than any
major call out. Although I would love it if that happened. I disagree about him just showing up in the background, or AHS just being in the background somewhere, just because there's like so much hype around the Chiss. But I also don't think they'll be introduced in episode 9.
Yeah, I mean, the hype is from the hardcore fans, so I don't think that they're gonna... I mean, there could be a major character with blue skin, and that's all there is to it. I don't think that would raise questions from the casual audience, but I don't think they're going to be talking about the Chiss ascendancy and how they're coming to help or anything major like that, where a casual audience member would be like, the who? When? What? Like,
yeah.
They don't want to confuse people. So as long as they can strike that balance of pleasing the hardcore fan while not confusing the casual, I think it's totally possible.
Yeah. They've got too much to wrap up in episode 9 to start introducing the Chiss.
I do agree with that too.
Iceberg 11327 wants to know if we prefer the Legends version of Vader, who is more broken, mourning the loss of his wife and family, or the canon version, who is more of an embodiment of pure hatred, continuing to grow darker.
Well, I kind of feel like the canon is going to wind up somewhere in between those two, especially with this latest arc of the Darth Vader comic, where he is interested in trying to communicate with Padme again, possibly even resurrecting her. That's still kind of up in the air what his actual goal is. But I think that we're going to find somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the new canon Vader is. But if I had to choose between just embodiment of hatred and anger versus the broken version, I think I prefer the canon. I kind of like the just... I'm angry at everything, and the only way that he could ever possibly come back is by finding out that he has family still. He has a son, and eventually he knows he has a daughter, and I think that's what brought him back, and I don't think that he cares about anything else, and that just makes his redemption greater for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the canon version better, but I do really like the elements that they're introducing in the comics, like you said, about Padme and everything, that is kind of more like the Legends version of him. I like that they're kind of striking a balance.
And I think he mentioned that like the Legends version was a little more humanized, and I think that that's something that maybe they're trying to get away from. I don't think that we want to view Vader as a human so much. He should be, like in Rogue One, just this instrument of destruction and terror. And he's very different from Anakin. Anakin is
right.
The human Vader.
Yeah.
And he's just, to me, he's gone during those 19, 20, whatever years.
Mm-hmm. Michael E. asks what we think of the Indiana Jones expanded universe. Well, I didn't know that existed, so... Go ahead.
It's like my monthly Indiana Jones question that I like to take. To be honest, I don't know nearly as much about Indiana Jones as I know about Star Wars. For as much as I love Indiana Jones, I love the movies, first and foremost. I have read a handful of the books, played a couple of the games. I watched the Young Indiana Jones Adventures back in the day, but it's been forever since I've seen them. So I'm just not nearly as well versed. I know I've seen some of the comics as well, but... Oh, and you mentioned specifically Fate of Atlantis. I love that game. That was like one of my first point-and-click adventures, so there are elements of it that I love, but I don't know nearly as much about Indiana Jones as I know about Star Wars.
Well, now that I know that there is an expanded universe of Indiana Jones, I can start my petition to bring it into the canon.
The Indiana Jones canon?
And, yeah, hashtag not my Indiana.
I wonder, now I'm like, is there like a canon for Indiana Jones the same way there is for Star Wars? Probably not, because...
Either way, I'm mad about it.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below, or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion, and again, check out all of our new rewards and goals and all that fun stuff. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel,
and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.
And have a happy and safe Halloween.
Nice.